Welcome to today's edition of Mental Health Matters. Today, we're going to be talking about fear and anxiety. I have Daisy Delmore on the show today, and she's a licensed mental health professional. She's going to share her personal and professional experience when it comes to fear and anxiety. Get you something to drink, get you a snack, and come on back. Hello, Daisy. How's it going?
Hi. Good. I'm so glad that you asked me to be on today.
Yes, I absolutely love doing the show with you. You always I mean we just vibe. We vibe and you have the mental health background on a professional level. So you've done a lot, you've seen a lot, you've put in a lot of work. So it would just be fitting.
Well, I appreciate that. I do want to make one correction. I have been in the mental health field for 25 years, licensed as one point in Washington State, but now I'm in Birmingham, Alabama. So I am not licensed in the state of Alabama because
Okay.
I chose to take a director position right now. So I
Okay.
just wanted to say that.
Okay. Correction. All right. So, okay, you just started. Tell a little bit about yourself. Tell a little bit more about yourself so folks can know who you are.
Like I said, I've been in the field for over 25 years, with a master's in counseling, bachelor's in
Sure.
psychology. I'm a director of a 988 at a crisis center for 988, which is a national suicide prevention line. Um, yes, I'm married and have five adult children. So yeah, and oh, I have to say, I have three dogs.
You
Those
gotta
are my
add the
babies
dogs to the
now.
family. Can't
Those are my
forget the
babies now.
dogs.
Yeah.
Nice. Nice. So Daisy, like when you was in college or was in high school, did you think that you would want to work in the mental health field or get licensed to be in the mental health field?
I did, to be honest. Most people ask me, did you know what you wanted to do when you were young? I did. In high school is when I realized I wanted to go in psychology, for a couple of reasons. I had a professor who was my psychology teacher, and I was always interested in knowing more about the mind, knowing more about how people behaviors are. So I was like, this is what I want to do. And then also I had a brother that died at 23 years old of alcoholism and addiction and mental health, I believe he had.
Mm.
And so I always wanted to know why he had to die at such a
Yeah.
young age. So I think those things kind of at a young age inspired me to stay in that field. So it seemed like that's the route my life kind of went, along
Yeah.
with my own personal journey.
Yeah. That's interesting too, because when I in high school, before high school, all up until I took maybe my first few classes in college, I wanted to be an actor. I always wanted to be an actor. I mean, I'm glad that I didn't go that route now that with all the stuff that's going on. But I
Mhm.
really, 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 really want to be an actor. And I remember when I first started working in like the human services field,
Mhm.
back in college and stuff, there was something there that kind of sparked my interest. And I remember it was working with brain injured youth, and I remember my supervisor at the time.
Mhm.
She was communicating with all us that was in orientation, do not get emotionally attached. And what happened
Mm-hmm.
when my first day on the job, I got emotionally attached. I came home, oh my God, like these youth and blah, blah, blah. And you know, but I really didn't know that I would want to kind of work or talk about mental health or deal with clients who may have some mental health challenges. Of course, within my family, we do have mental health challenges, but
Mm-hmm.
that was like taboo. Nobody talked about it, and
Right.
you just got to move on. Ain't nothing wrong with you, and things like that. So people just kind of swept it under the rug, so to speak. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Um. So you going from knowing that you want to work in the mental health field, um, go to college, you get your credentials, your degree and stuff like that. How was that like when you actually got the hands-on experience opposed to just the book knowledge?
Well, I definitely think that you really don't know how it is until you're actually in the field.
Yeah,
And because I started off in I think my very first job after my degree was, well, I would say my internship was in alcohol and drug recovery. So I actually started in alcohol and drug recovery, helping people with addictions, and that was a tough field.
yeah,
And then I transitioned to a child and adolescent therapist. So, I realized that it's a lot of need. I think I fell in love with the mental health field because I saw the need being so great and a reward of helping people. I think recovery, addiction is a real hard area, and I've totally went in that field off and on in my career, helping adults as well as youth. But I felt like mental health was an area that most often people are struggling, which causes them to sometimes go into addictions. And
yes,
so I was more interested in, learning more about that area. And so when I started working with children and youth, I think that just was like an eye opener. You learn so much more than just what you see in the books,
right,
um, being a rehab, uh, going in the rehab field, I learned about people with disabilities and
yeah,
having a passion for those with disabilities and not looking at it as like, oh, they just should have done better, because
right,
growing up, it's like a lot of people that seem like they had a negative attitude towards people with mental illness or substance addiction. But I found to have, I was under the impression that, they brought it upon themselves and stuff like that. But when I begin to work with people, I begin to see that it's so much more
hmm,
than what people had said or what I even thought. When you get to meeting people that are going through these trials and circumstances, and especially now as an adult, but even when I was in college, my younger years, I found like, wow, these kids, these youth really need support. They need to know that they
yes,
can do better, that they
yes,
don't have to fear like their life is gonna always be this way.
yes,
Unlike what I grew up, or even my brother who died, I don't think he knew that his life could be different.
yes. I definitely agree with you on that. I'm gonna take a time. I'm gonna read some little definition with fear and anxiety. It
Okay.
says the main difference between anxiety and fear is that anxiety does not need a specific trigger. It can come from anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
While
Mm-hmm.
fear is usually your body's response to an actual threat. It says fear and anxiety are related and have several overlapping physical symptoms, such as a rapid heart rate, nausea, and shortness of breath. Do
Mm-hmm.
you agree with that?
Yeah, that is definitely a part of it.
Yeah.
I do think there are specific areas of anxiety that, people can have. When you talk about going in the field, it's a general anxiety that people have that is generalized.
Hmm.
You could be afraid of, just having fear of anything for the most part, just, you know, but then there are specific things that people have, trauma
Hmm.
related fears. So it's not just necessarily, um, I mean, they can have anxiety that's generalized. And
Yeah.
then they can have a fear that is based on, like you said, a threat.
Yeah.
And I think about this, which could trigger anxiety,
Yeah.
and I think about a time when I was in high school and I actually got stuck up by, with a gun by a group of guys walking to my home. Me and my cousin was walking in, and she walked ahead of me, and they kind of like cornered me and put a gun to my side. And I never forget that at the moment, I don't know if I felt as much as fear as much as I did after.
Right.
So I just felt like I all of a sudden had this anxiety because of this fear and this fear of going outside. I was always a little paranoid for a while, looking over my shoulder. And then there is just, an anxiety that comes with life circumstances, I feel like, where you are worried about bills,
Yes.
where
Yes.
you just worried about the election. Let's not talk
Yes.
about that.
Yes.
It's just a lot of things that everyday society that's happening you could worry about,
Yes.
and have an anxiety about. School, for example,
Yes.
people have test anxiety, which is a real thing,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you talked about earlier today about, you said that your brother battled fear or anxiety, and you said that, or well, I think you were saying that he didn't know that he could probably his life can be
Do
different.
better.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that remind me of like the way I grew up, my childhood, my brother, and things like that, who, was murdered and stuff. And even to this day, I think about that. I think about what his life would have been like because
Mm-hmm.
growing up in Chicago, in a
Mm-hmm.
hood, some of those community members don't really see themselves outside of their community, so to speak. They don't see themselves outside of the community where I can do better for myself. And I'm not talking about this is an absolute and a period behind my statement, but I'm saying like the vast majority when I was growing up, and even some of them now, a lot of them, they were just stuck. And even me, going to college, I was called a sellout and,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
around the white folks and stuff like that. But that was the mindset back then. And, they had something to
Mm-hmm.
prove, you know, although every day when they wake up, they knew that their lives is at risk.
Risk,
And,
yes.
and there was a strong spirit of fear over
Mm,
all of them, but they refused to do something to leave. You know?
yes. I think about my nephew. I would call him my nephew because we grew up like brothers, but he was a cousin, and he was in the gang, and he had I think, it was like a threat on his life where he knew that he had a target on him. And
Yeah.
so I remember trying to talk to him when I came in town, and I was just praying, like praying for him. But I was talking to him about getting out. I said, well, hey,
Right.
why don't you change your environment? Like, come where I'm at school, come change your
Yeah.
whole environment, your life. And he was like, no, this is where I am. And I said, well, you could die here.
Right.
And he was just like, he had more anxiety about leaving because he was like, what I'm gonna do when I go, and
Uh-huh.
I don't know anybody there, and he really had more anxiety and more
Yeah.
fear of leaving than he did about his life being ended
Yeah.
because of this gang. And I thought, wow.
Yes.
And so I couldn't convince him to come. And I
Yeah.
promise you, it was not a week later, 2 weeks later, he was murdered
Yeah.
because he trusted the wrong person, went outside,
Mm-hmm.
and he had a hit already and
Yep.
trusted the wrong person, and they murdered him in his car.
Yes.
And so it's traumatic. That was so traumatic to me because I thought, oh man, if I could have
Yeah.
just convinced him to
Yeah.
come where I was, that's what may not have happened. But people have choices
Right.
and they have a free will, and we can't make them make decisions. But that goes back to the fear of believing that the fear of change, the fear
Right.
of things can get better.
Yes, absolutely. That story was very similar to my brother's situation and my cousin's situation. You know him. They had a hit out on my brother and my cousin. My brother refused to leave, and he stayed in the house for an extended period of time.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
He, wanted to go and get him some marijuana. He tried to be slick, instead of being in the car, he, drove, rode on a little bike or whatever. Then the opposition, they sent somebody he had never seen before, which was a 13-year-old boy at
Mm.
that time, and that's how they shot and killed him. Now, my cousin, on the other hand, my mom and my auntie convinced me to let him come because I didn't want him to come. I'm in college, I'm living my life, blah blah blah. But when he got down there, to Carbondale, it was a culture shock to him. You got to
Mm-hmm.
think,
Unbelievable. Mm-hmm.
yeah, growing up around all blacks, that way of life, the guns, the drugs, the girls, all of that, everything. And then you come to Carbondale where you got somewhat of melting pot, a little bit of diversity down
Right.
there, things like that.
Multicultural, a lot more.
Yeah, and he was like, I mean, it was extremely hard for him, extremely, and I could not understand why.
Why?
And I'm like, dude, my brother gone, blah, blah, blah. Like, you should be grateful. Like, your life is spared. But he wasn't looking at it that way because he had grew up and was so used to the fast life and the fear and the anxiety. And, like here he got peace and he got to look over his shoulder. You can wake up,
Right.
and I just thought that was so crazy to me at the time. Like, and we didn't get along because he was used to one thing and I didn't understand why. You know what I'm saying? To me, I'm like, well, why? Like, you don't have to look over your shoulder. You ain't got to walk out the door and scare somebody gonna put a gun to your head. But he was
Right.
used to that, and it was hard.
Yeah. And the rush and the thrill of their life being like that, some often is what causes them to stay in that, is
Yeah.
because this is all they know. This is who they is. This their identity is
Yeah.
attached to that.
Yes.
Whereas, the key is, because I was thinking about my cousin before, they actually did try to get him to go out of town before. And again, he, didn't want to go. Um, when people feel like this is who they are and their identity, and they don't realize the reality of what could really happen. I really feel like so often, even though it's talked about, like his dad was shot up because of him.
Wow.
Um, his dad lived, but literally was shot like 20 something times. And they don't know if it was targeted. His dad didn't know nobody in the gang. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it was related to him. Um, but yeah, he lived, and that didn't even inspire him to want to change.
Wow. And that is so interesting to me how, you know, how I don't know how fear, I mean, not saying that it's a good or bad thing, but how it cultivates a person's reality, based off what they're used to or the way they grew up or the community they so used to being around and things like that. Like I still have family members, they just refuse to leave Chicago. They're not going to do it.
Mhm.
They are
Yeah.
accustomed to that lifestyle and they're not going to do it. I remember my youngest brother came down here to stay in California. I
Uh-uh.
told him, look, this is different, blah, blah, blah. Had a long talk with him. He came down here. He was like, oh, they slow here. Like,
Yeah,
like
they
you have a
taking it
field day.
slow.
Yeah. Yeah. He like, oh, of course he didn't make it. I had to send him back, but it's just the mentality, and
Yeah.
it was rough for him too, because once again, they are used to that fast life, looking behind your back, just looking on your shoulders and locking your car door and walking fast. And I don't know. I mean, it's been a while since I've been there, but I mean, that's my home in terms of my birthplace, but I don't miss it at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and I think about today's society, and I've been in three different states. I feel
Yeah.
like, and the culture is so different, each of
Wow.
those. Um, but even in Birmingham, thinking about Birmingham, they have a really high rate of gun violence right now. Young people being murdered,
Um,
people, women. I mean, it's just pretty bad right now. But we could say we saw that all the time in Chicago, and
right.
but Birmingham is a smaller state, so I mean city, so you wouldn't expect as much violence as it has been. It's been an uptick of violence, even more.
Yeah.
But one of the things I was thinking of is that anxiety for people is related to their economy so often because a lot of people are struggling,
Yeah.
struggling with finances, struggling with housing, struggling, with economy, feeling like people really care. Do people really
Right.
care?
Right.
And I feel like even though we're in 2024, almost 2025, and people are still struggling with believing that they have a purpose,
Yeah.
you know, young people, older people,
Yeah.
when their finances go, I can't take care of my family and I'll just kill myself,
Yes.
like you wouldn't think those kind of anxieties are still real. The election that just happened,
Yeah.
a whole lot of anxiety around that. I mean, I couldn't get in a car without in a Uber without like it being talked about,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, that election brought on a lot of fear and a lot of
Mhm.
anxiety leading up to the election, not so much because obviously folks didn't know who was going to win. But I also thought it was interesting too that leading up to the election, people were uncomfortable with talking about who they was going to vote for. I
Yeah,
mean,
nobody still likes to share, and I don't
yeah,
blame them.
yeah, and and I just I don't know. I think for me, I mean, just the way I think it's just I don't know, but it I don't know. It's like it's just not that big of a deal to me. I mean, I feel like people need to be able to have the right to make their own choice, and people still need to be okay with it. And it
Right.
was such a strong I feel silence, a silent disagreement. Uh,
It's polarizing though. That's why the
yeah.
election was very polarizing, and people were very aggressive during these elections
Oh
lately.
yeah.
They've gotten worse and worse. So people are
Yes.
afraid of being attacked and being
Yeah.
targeted
Yeah.
um, for their views.
Yes.
And here I am in the South where it's a Republican state. Like you can obviously know, like Illinois, Chicago is a Democratic state. Like,
Yeah.
it's very, it can be polarizing if you think opposite of where you
Right.
are, even,
Right. Right.
you know.
Exactly.
So people are afraid.
Yeah.
I was just seeing a statistic just today when I just happened to be scanning the news, but it was saying how 64% of Americans have anxiety, election anxiety, because not just before the election, but even still,
Oh my God.
Since
Yes.
President Trump is now going to be the president in 57 days, uh, and then people don't know what the economy is going to look like. They don't know as
Yeah.
family wise if they're going to lose out on more. They're putting their trust in, so often in what is happening in the world.
Yeah.
Uh,
Exactly.
so
No, no, that's true. That's real. And I've seen just my experience afterwards, after you know, he was, elected and things like that. I mean, there was definitely a major shift in the community. You can tell that at my job, it was so many people called off work. Like I'm not playing like and my boss,
really,
oh my God, yes. My boss made a comment like, oh, it's a ghost town around here. And that's when I realized that, wow, okay,
people are
you
affected.
yeah, people are deeply affected mentally by the results.
Mhm.
Rather it been one or the other.
Right. It's
I
still
right. I mean, I didn't know it ran that deep because me personally, I'm like, okay, I gotta go to work. I stayed up and watched, throughout the night and watched, the election, but I'm like, I never had in my mind I wasn't gonna get up and go to work regardless of who won. That was just
right.
my thought, a process.
Not
But
a. Mhm.
yeah, it was man, it was
I
it
think
was interesting.
I think even on my job, it was brought up in our staff meeting about, if anybody was affected, and nobody, it was like creep, creep, creep. Nobody wanted to talk about anything that was affecting, them
Yeah.
personally. It was more like what's going on in the world, like, that's being affected. Um, so people are afraid to talk about it even in work situations, but
Yeah.
they know that it's affecting people at work.
Yeah.
Being a suicide prevention line, we got a few calls about people being affected by the results. And because, our agency is a crisis center, but it's out of United Way,
Yeah.
Central Alabama. United Way is more progressive, more of a democratic, view of operating.
Yeah.
And so they were really affected by, you know, even though, you're not surprised being in that state, who
Right.
everybody voted for the most part.
Yeah.
But anxiety has been really a big deal. And how do we get help people to get past this
Right. Right.
is the
Exactly.
key, you
Yes.
know.
That's the thing. How do we get people to move past? Because I think in some people's minds, they're already thinking the worst is going to happen. So, in my opinion, no matter how much good or bad may come out of this, oh, I knew it was going to happen because of such, 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 such.
Yeah.
Regardless of which side, regardless of who won, that's just the reality of it. And you
Well,
know,
especially when the news media is telling you that people are moving out of the country because of it.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's what a lot of people are being fed information that's causing fear and anxiety. The news.
Yes, misinformation too, a
Yeah.
lot of misinformation and biased information on either side,
Yes.
You're
Yes.
right about that.
Yeah. I you know, I know someone personally, not necessarily associated with this particular topic. I mean, this particular situation, but I have I shouldn't even say this as a friend, but I know someone that I've known for a while, and I was thinking this to myself, literally on the way home from work. I was like, man, um, how can I help or get this person help because they deal with severe
Hmm.
fear and anxiety. I mean, severe
Is
to
it
the
like with panic attacks and
yes,
is
yes,
it like
yes. Their mind goes straight to the worst, even
okay.
when it's something really minute. I mean, I'm telling you, like all the time, and you can't talk them down because their mind is stuck. Like, oh, da da da, da. And I was thinking about this person on my way home from work, and I'm like, man, how can I help this person and get this person? I pray with this person, I've supported
Hmm.
this person, and I ain't gonna lie, as a thought came in my head, I'm like, man, like I need to be careful. Just I don't know. I just because it's to that point. You can't. It's like they're just stuck in there, and they don't see no way out. There's no hope, you know.
Yes.
And it's
And
just
but it's letting them see that there is hope. But you're right. Some people got to go through a lot longer before they
yeah,
get to that place of brokenness where they see the truth.
yeah,
And you can encourage, and they receive encouragement, or they
yeah,
receive the hope. I have a
yeah,
cousin that I was just on the phone with last night. Same thing, kind of, just very like my life is a mess
right,
in all areas, and I mean, to the point where she felt like I need a prophet, I need a something, I need
yeah,
somebody to speak it to me. But it's not somebody to speak. People have been speaking it to you. God has been giving you signs, but it's what you're willing to do with what you
right,
get.
right,
What part can you put in this after you get
right,
the encouragement? What can you do differently?
right,
And I didn't start there with her, but I did end there with her to
yeah,
talk to her about different plan that, what's something that's going to help her. She was like, I need a vacation. I just need a vacation. It's like, but
yeah,
you just told me you can't financially and
wow,
because of work take a vacation.
right,
So that's not an option
right,
right now. And if that's not an option, if that's your only option, then you're lost, right? So
right,
let's go back and see what other options you have. So
Right.
I really approach it in a way of, if this is something that is dire for you,
Right.
I got to think of a safety plan to help you. Like you got to come up with a safety plan, but I will help you with that safety plan. Like,
Right.
how can you get out of this mental state?
Right, exactly. That's 100% correct. Because even this individual, you know, reached out to me today, and they had to go up to school for a school meeting, with to deal with their daughter's teacher, because allegedly the teacher was talking about politics or whatever, and so the my friend daughter said, oh, I don't want to be involved in it, whatever. And the teacher kind of forced it on
Mhm.
the individual child. And so I knew they was going or whatever. And then they called me like an hour before the appointment, and they just broke down. I mean, broke down, like went from 0 to 1 million quick. And they were stuck there, and I'm trying to talk. No, you don't understand. Like I really don't want to go up, and it's just there was nothing I could say, and it's always like that, and it puts me in
Yeah,
a
that's
position.
anxiety. Mhm.
Yeah, and honestly, put me in a position like I don't want to deal with that. Like I don't, you know what I'm saying? I'm just being honest. Like I just because I don't. No matter what I do and say, there's
Mhm.
no, they just it got to take its course before they come out of that.
Mhm.
And it's like this is like every
Yeah.
other day, sometimes twice a day. So I'm just like, I just it's
And sometimes, yes. And sometimes people, that's how they used to operating. So if
right.
that's their norm, it's
Yeah,
like getting out of that norm is uncomfortable for them. And
yeah,
so that's where, counseling come in at,
right.
like a
Yes.
professional,
Hmm.
medication. I'm not trying to be,
Yeah,
I believe in prayer. I love, me, I'm a pastor. I love to pray for people, but I do recognize when people are beyond, they need that extra support.
yeah, absolutely.
And eating right, I would say, even the way, are you taking care of yourself? Self-care is so important. Are you eating right? Are you sleeping? Because
Yeah,
those things can mess with your mind.
right,
If you're not eating, if you're not sleeping, your stress level tends to go up even higher.
right.
If you're on edge all the time, and she was telling me I'm on edge all the time, and I just snapped at work one day. Now, who's to say that snap might turn into something more major? You're
Right,
not just going off
exactly.
on somebody. So you
Yes.
got to deal with that now. That means
Hmm.
something's going on with you. And
Yeah,
if you know that, then you got to do what it takes to get yourself back stabilized.
yeah,
And that's what we got to help people see. If we're just
yeah.
always like accommodating them, like, oh, yeah, this is just who they are, we'll deal with
Hmm.
it. No, we don't have to put up with, we got to encourage them to come out of that
Right,
state, of that behavior. And we all have to change in areas. I always tell people, I'm not perfect. I didn't get here where I'm at overnight. I
right.
have definitely had to work on myself, to get to this place, because I dealt with anxiety, severe anxiety. I
Yeah,
remember a doctor telling me when I went to the doctor, he said, "Dang, you worry so much." He said,
yeah.
he said, everything I say is not like you always have something that's worse.
Right.
And he's like, you worry so much. And when he said that, I never forget it because I didn't realize how much I actually did worry.
Yeah,
And but over time, I had to understand that where's that worry come from? Why am I thinking that way? And work on that area. And
yes,
of course, my faith helped me do that because I began to learn more about peace and God.
yes.
And some people are not, spiritual or, have a faith or religion, but they have something that they can hold on to that has encouraged them,
Yes.
whether it's their grandmother or, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If it was something that they've always was told that inspired them. So it's like, what is that thing that you hold on to help you stay hopeful? And
Yeah.
that's what we got to do when we're encouraging other people that's having a lot of anxiety and fear. But
Yes.
there is steps like, hey, if you get to a point where you've exhausted all these things, then maybe it's time to analyze, do you need to see a doctor? Do you need to see
Right.
a psychiatrist? Uh, a therapist.
Yes.
These are things, don't be afraid. I feel like therapy is great. If you get
Right.
somebody that you can connect with and you don't mind talking to, then please
Right.
do.
Yeah.
It's a good thing.
Yeah. A total stranger that is not affiliated with your everyday life, your
Yes,
trauma, your situation, whatever.
yes.
And these people are trained. This is their
Trained
background. Yeah.
yes.
That's what they do. And unfortunately, some people won't do it,
Mm-mm.
and for those people who won't, hopefully if they see this, hopefully that would give them some type of motivation. And I will say therapy had a stigma, counselor,
Yes.
psychiatrist
Mhm.
back in the
I've been a
day.
therapist for years, and there's a stigma still. We
Yeah.
try to break
Oh, wow.
we
Yeah.
try to break that, but we get even thinking about the suicide crisis line. There's people that call. We tell them it's strictly confidential. Nobody ever have to know you called.
Right.
You don't have to tell us your name.
Right.
Um, but you could share your concern, your issue, and we hear a lot. But I'm grateful that people are calling the crisis line because they won't see a counselor.
Yeah.
But at least if they're in crisis at the moment, they can call 988 and talk to someone.
Yeah.
And at least that's somebody to hear you out
Yeah.
and then give you resources that can support you and help you if you're willing to take it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there is help out there for people who are struggling with anxiety and depression. And then there's a normal, everyday anxiety that we all deal with, or um, uh, but then there is the anxiety that is debilitating, that
Yeah.
causes people to not be able to function correctly or function at all in their everyday life. And that's where they need this kind of help.
Yeah. What's interesting? So for example, when I recently went to New York, I had got
Mhm.
on a boat ride, and I've only been on one, two, maybe two or three in my life total. But when I got on the boat, my body immediately start to shift, feel some type of way as the boat got to swerving with
Oh
the waves
yeah, a
and
little
stuff.
fear started coming in.
Exactly. And so, the people I would, they was like, oh, let's go upstairs, blah, 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 blah. And I was telling them, like, look, because you have to go outside. And I was like, look,
Uh-huh.
I said, I can't move now. Like, and they were looking at me like, really? Like, they laugh like it's a joke. But I know what my body feel, you know what I'm saying? And so I'm trying to sit there. Then I'm like, okay, I don't want to stop them from having fun. So finally, I take a few steps out, and they was like, "Oh, well, just come on up here." And so I'm looking at all this water, and I'm looking at this short space to get up there. And so finally, I'm like, "Okay, I'm just gonna do it." I'm talking about it was just like all that anxiety, fear hit me at once, and I muscled my way upstairs. But it was so heavy on me, I couldn't even enjoy sitting upstairs in this open space. It was an open space with all this water and stuff.
I know. I was just on a boat not this summer like that, and my daughter kind of experienced what you experienced.
Yeah,
She felt the same way, and she went up there and sat for a few minutes, and she just, oh my goodness, she just couldn't, and she had
yeah,
to go down to the bottom, back to the bottom, and I'm
yeah.
running back and forth upstairs like it
Oh
was
no,
nothing.
I couldn't do it. I
And
couldn't
I
do
was
it.
like doing the Titanic thing, like
Oh
it was,
no.
I was
Eh,
loving it. It was well watching, but she couldn't even, her brain wouldn't allow her to grasp that, all this water was too much. And part of
Yeah,
that anxiety causes motion sickness too. It can cause
yeah,
your body to destabilize
yes,
mentally. So if you've never done it a lot either, that's another thing. I've been in the sky and water, so I was used to it. But we do get a natural fear.
yeah,
That's our body way of saying something's not quite right. Sometimes,
yeah,
fear is not a bad thing. It saves our lives a lot of
yeah.
times. Like we touch a hot stove, we should have a reaction,
Right,
not to want to touch nothing hot. But or if we see, we go by water and we have a thought we can drown, you don't want to go in the deep end if you can't swim. It's a
right.
natural fear associated with our body response.
Yeah, it was.
So did you go to the bottom or did you stay up there?
I couldn't. I couldn't. I had to. I really felt like I was going to fall off the boat. I don't know why. That's what my man was telling me. And I sat down for maybe 4 or 5, 6 seconds at the most. And I'm like, okay, I can't sit here. And so I'm trying to, you know, look at this exit where I got to go. And it was too much. I just kind of downstairs and went back in. As soon as I got down at the bottom in the opening, all that went away.
Mm-hmm.
All that stuff went
Yeah,
away.
and that's associated with, yeah, that was your natural fear, your body
Yeah,
telling you something because you've not done that before too.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I remember when I first started flying. Now was end up being a mission pastor and flying all over the different countries, and still do. But I had a fear of flying at one
yeah,
point, not necessarily getting on a plane, but when the plane took off, any turbulence
yes,
happened, I was like, like I had
yeah,
almost a panic at
yeah,
times. And I remember grabbing the person I didn't even know next to me, like
yeah,
when the turbulence came, I was like, I like
yeah,
grabbed his arm and I was felt so bad that I grabbed him and tell you, I don't even know this person. I was like, I'm so sorry. And he was like,
yeah,
that's okay. And he was so afraid. And it was almost like I was having panic.
yeah,
And, I always say that I prayed about that fear when it happened. I remember being in college. But I would start praying, like, Lord, I don't want to have this fear in
yeah,
me. I don't want to feel like something's going to happen to me.
yeah,
Um, if you telling me that nothing's going to happen to me, then why am I feeling this way? So I ask you to
right,
deliver me and help me get out of this.
yes,
And I really believe that God helped me to fear not to be fearful when I fly. So from that point on, when I went on a plane, I started thinking about I started thinking positive thoughts because that's
yeah,
where it came from. It came from all these thoughts of me falling in the water, not being able to swim, if the plane
yeah,
crashed. It was that kind of thing. And
yes,
I still don't like being like when I did parasailing, I wouldn't don't drop me in the water. So
yeah,
I still have this natural, thing about water, but at the same time, I challenge that fear by getting in the boats, by
yeah,
getting on the sky. Does that make sense? Doing
yeah.
parasailing
No,
and
it
stuff.
does. It
So
does.
that's why they tell you to face your fears a lot of time is one of the ways to deal with fear is by
Yeah,
exposure. The more
yeah,
you do something, the less you will have that fear.
yes. I
So
definitely
Jesse,
get
you need to get on more boats.
yeah, I was supposed to go on a cruise. I shut that down quick. Like, no.
After that, I bet you like,
Oh
yeah,
no. Mm-mm.
and then don't watch anything related to real life boats crashing, almost hitting
Oh
ice
yeah.
and stuff, because that does happen. Stuff happen
Yeah.
like that. And you know, I just saw on the news recently and I was like, wow, because I've never done a cruise and I've been really hesitant to do a cruise too.
Yeah.
And it seemed like I'm always seeing something happen when people go on cruises. And I'm like,
Yeah.
why do I keep seeing this?
Right. Exactly.
Because everybody who I know, though, reality is so many people have been on cruises and nothing has ever happened.
Right. Exactly.
So that's why we know it's irrational a lot of times, our fears.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so there is a fear that keeps us safe, but then there's a rational fear.
Yeah. Yeah. Even when it comes to like mountain lions and bears, I have people, oh, camping and oh, no, it's not gonna happen. Like you said, every time I'm on YouTube or mostly TikTok though, I see these videos of these mountain lions attacking humans or a bear, and I'm just like, no way. There's no way. I got a friend right now who lives in not like deep in the mountains, but it's probably about maybe an hour away from where I live. And they show me look send me little videos from their rain cam when the bear came. And I said, no, there's me. I know I cannot be comfortable knowing if I step out my front or my back door, that there's a slight possibility that a mountain lion and bear could potentially be there. That right there gonna shut it down for me. And
What now they could be right in your yard, and you can walk outside and have to fight a bear in your car, getting in your
let,
car.
let me tell you something. My car is in my driveway. When I come out, I'm pulling right out. And if they can get in that car, then they're gonna be able to get me. But no, no.
Yeah, that happens. A guy got out of his car's parked outside his garage, and he came out, and a bear was trying to get in his car,
That's
and so
crazy.
I would
That's
have ran back
crazy.
in the house. I'm not gonna fight no bear.
No way. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But once that natural fear, and they tell you, and people at work, they would, they tell me, oh, you're supposed to make yourself look big. I said, I'm not. My first reaction is to run. My first reaction is to get away. I'm not
Yeah.
thinking
They
about,
say they say your body natural is fight, flight, or freeze.
yeah,
And I noticed that my fear response is freeze. I'm
yeah.
bad. Like I like. Have you ever felt paralyzed when you're afraid?
No,
That's a
never.
freeze. So that's
Really?
my natural. Yours might be run.
Yeah.
Fight,
Yours is
fight,
free?
flight means to run, and
Right.
freeze. So you freeze up, your body freezes up. And that's why, or some people fight. They like start throwing things at them or whatever.
Yeah.
My natural is freeze for some reason. I noticed that. Yours
Really?
might be yes, and I didn't know that.
Mine's the fight or run for sure. I know that
Yeah,
for a fact.
and so I think, but it's almost like it's not even you. It's like you paralyzed when
Yeah.
you like in that freeze stage. Like you can't, like you in slow motion is what I'm saying. Like you move,
Yeah.
your body is just, froze. Like you can't do what you would normally do. It's weird. So
Yeah.
I'm praying about that. I said, Lord, if I'm ever in a situation, I need you to get me out of that freeze mode.
Right, right,
Because that's your
exactly.
brain automatically goes to fight, flight, or freeze.
Yeah, I
And
definitely agree.
I would rather do the fight, right? Like you might run. Julian, my husband cracked me up because he'd be like, you ain't gotta tell me twice. I'll be already gone
Oh, he
before I saw.
gone. He gone. Yeah, he
He ain't
gone.
even gonna say nothing. He just gonna
Yeah,
be gone. I said, you
yeah,
was just leave. You ain't gonna say nothing.
yeah,
He said,
yeah.
I'll warn you while I'm running.
Right, right. That part.
He's so funny. But yeah, but there is a fear that keeps people paralyzed in their life, and that's where people need help, is where they're not allowing their lives. We talked about people like that live in Chicago that are in gangs, or and they don't want to change their life.
Yeah,
That's a paralyzed state. You keeping yourself in a place that is not helpful, that is not gonna get you to a better place. So
yeah,
we really want to, I feel like when you're talking about fear, it's dangerous when it's paralyzing.
yeah,
When it keeps you. Now I can see you don't have to get on a boat ever. That's not
yeah,
something you have to do.
yeah.
But if you have to go to work every day and you're fearful of driving,
Yes.
then
And some
that's
people are.
paralyzing. And it's
Yes,
people that are afraid to come out their house now because
yes.
of the elections, because of the disaster when we were, hit in, September 11th.
Yeah,
It's people that's probably still traumatized by that fear and have a fear related to going around buildings now, going in buildings.
yeah, yeah,
So anything that affects us that's paralyzing is something that we don't want to have, and we want to help people not to stay paralyzed in their life.
yeah,
And if you recognize, if you haven't, like where you don't want to go outside or you don't want to function in your everyday life because of some anxiety, then that's paralyzing. That's fear, and you need to come out of it.
I definitely agree with you on that. I wish that, you kind of said something earlier about going to school, causing anxiety and things like that. I wish that a lot of, at least when I was in college, I wish
That's
that
anxiety is the real thing.
man, because I know back in the day, I mean, people dealt with their fear and anxiety in different ways, to cope with it. Some people drank, they did a lot of stuff. And I know that was some of the stuff I did. But looking back at it now, I think if I would have had the resources that are available now, it would have helped me coach better in
Well,
college. I know someone now, actually my niece right now, and I just recently found this out. Honestly, Daisy, maybe about maybe a year ago, that she deals with a lot of depression and
Hmm.
anxiety, like major. And I'm like, oh, like, cause she's a tough little girl, but she got these, issues that needs to be dealt with professionally. And my sister kind of talked to me about it, and I think she may have got connected with a therapist. I don't know, but it was just surprising to see it was her because of her physical makeup, and you
Mm.
don't know what a person going through. You don't know
You
what a
have no
person
clue.
dealing with,
That's right.
you know. And so that's one of the things I learned. You get people who got all this stuff, they trauma bond, and a lot of times that's why things don't work out, you know.
Right.
So,
Hmm.
man, that's y'all know that just kind of struck a chord. I mean, when you talked about the education and stuff.
Yeah, it's hard for college students nowadays. They're bombarded with social media, TikTok,
Yes,
Instagram, all these other little chat options, and it's distracting and it's not helpful. My daughter deals with mental health. I don't know, I've told you that in the
yeah,
past, and she an advocate for her own mental health, but she talks about being in school and how even working has, it affects her, because if she don't have enough time, then her anxiety level increases because now
yeah,
she's giving her time to something and now she doesn't have enough time to do what she needs to do for school. So she's gonna opt to not go to class, I mean, not work during this next semester so that she could focus on her school. And we didn't have those type of options when we was in school. I'm just being honest.
right, right,
I had to work two jobs, had a kid.
right,
I'm
right,
just being real. I was I had with anxiety, with
right,
depression. I
right.
had to fight my way through school and work hard and press my way. And and my daughter, I'm like, granted, she does have mental health with support. I didn't even have support like that,
Right.
but with support. But she is saying, I can't do that. I can't do, work and going to school when I have these classes that I'm having I'm having distress and
Yeah.
anxiety, and my grades are suffering if I stay in this state working. And
Right.
it's just like, man, like,
Yeah.
you know, why is it so hard for this generation? But I think about all the things that they are affected by, which was different than us.
Yes.
They had as a time where, COVID hit. They had a trauma,
Yeah.
when COVID hit and everybody was isolated and they were isolated. And it's just different times. And so you got to even address younger people differently than was addressed, dealing
Yes.
with anxiety and depression. You can't just blow it off like a nothing because it's
Mm-hmm.
not to them.
Right. Right. And they will act on some stuff too, for
Yes,
sure. What days together? So we've run out of time.
I
Whenever we
see.
do this, it always go quick, don't it? Always.
Yes, it really does. But I always enjoy, and I just hope that I was able to help someone when you share this, because
Yeah.
anxiety and depression is a real anxiety, fear, depression, they are real issues.
I agree. I agree. And thank you so much for taking the time out and sharing your experience and sharing the information. I'm sure somebody will definitely benefit from the information you share. So thank you so much.
All right, thanks for
Mhm.
having me again.
You're welcome. And that's it for this edition of Mental Health Matters. If you enjoyed this particular show, if you would like to be a guest on our show, or if you would like a DVD copy of this show, please dial 916 366 4600.